What's up everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video, and we're going to be talking about, yes, Bravely Default 2 once again. There's been quite a bit of confusion over this game, especially with Bravely Second End Layer, the game that came out a number of years ago on the Nintendo 3DS. Is Bravely Default 2 a direct sequel? Is it a sequel to Bravely Second End Layer? Does Bravely Second End Layer get retconned? What's going on here? So I decided to go over the fact sheet again provided from Square Enix and Nintendo, in addition to adding in some extra information for you guys. As a big fan of the Bravely Default series, I have played and beat both games with Bravely Default, the original, and Bravely Default, or more like Bravely Second End Layer. So let's go ahead and get into the fact sheet again, then we'll talk about the differences between Bravely Default versus Bravely Second End Layer versus Bravely Default 2. We'll talk about the art style, the gameplay, and kind of like what you can expect from this one. So let's go ahead and get into the fact sheet. So this is provided directly from Square Enix, and it's going to allude to some of the stuff that we're going to talk about in the next one with Bravely Default versus the End Layer, or versus Bravely Second, then versus Bravely Default 2. So a new world, a new story, and all new heroes of light await in an original RPG experience arriving on the Nintendo Switch system in 2020. And what they said there was very important: an original RPG experience. They're not alluding to it being kind of connected to other things per se directly. They're saying original RPG experience, new world, new story. So they're already kind of setting you up to kind of tell you, hey, forget about what you knew about Bravely Default when it comes to the other games. This is its own thing. So let's go ahead and get into the rest of it here. And it says, this successor to the original Bravely Default game comes from the team that brought you the Bravely series and Octopath Traveler, and features music from Revo, Sound Horizon / Linked Horizon, acclaimed composer of the Bravely Default soundtrack. Brand new entry in the Square Enix's Bravely series. Travel the world in search of the 4 crystals with the latest incarnation of the brave band known as the Heroes of Light. Latest creation from Team Asano, creators of Bravely series and Octopath Traveler. New world filled with new characters, but with the atmosphere and excitement that Bravely series is known for. So all that information was very, very useful into breaking down what this is. So let's talk about that, right? New world, new story. So this is very similar to what you would see probably in the Final Fantasy series, which makes sense because Final Fantasy, Square Enix, obviously Bravely Default, Square Enix as well. And basically what they're trying to say here is that Bravely Default and Bravely Second, those took place pretty much within the same world. Those were the same thing, because in Bravely Second End Layer, it is pretty much a direct kind of sequel to the original, because it takes place 2.5 years after the events of Bravely Default, and Agnes has been elected to the Pope of the Crystal Orthodoxy. So it is a pretty much direct follow-up. You can see it as like a Final Fantasy X to X-2, or a I would say like Crisis Core to Final Fantasy VII, right? They're taking place in the same world. You have the same characters and different events that happen within that. Now, Bravely Default 2 is much like, let's say, Final Fantasy VIII, right? It doesn't take place within the same kind of area as Final Fantasy VII. It is something that's different, but it's still known for that gameplay. All this different stuff that you know Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VIII has that, but it's not connected in the same way that Crisis Core is connected to Final Fantasy VII. So kind of think of it like that. It's pretty much its own thing, but it is a follow-up. So Bravely Default 2, you don't necessarily have to play Bravely Second End Layer and Bravely Default, the original, in order to play Bravely Default 2, just like you don't have to play Final Fantasy 3 or 4 to play 5 or 6 to play 7. Very similar to this. So I think it's important for fans out there, because there's a lot of people already saying things about Bravely Default based off what they see, and not necessarily knowing exactly what happened with Bravely Default, the original, Bravely Second End Layer. So I wanted to just make sure I come out and clarify that for you guys. So let's talk a little bit about the art style in the game, because that's also raised some eyebrows, and I've seen some weird comparisons from people that I appreciate, but I've seen some weird comparisons. Bravely Default has a pop-up book art style. It's very unique. They kind of showed you a little bit of that when the debut trailer was revealed, the whole claymation type of thing, and how they showed off the towns in a very unique kind of hand-drawn art style. That's what you can expect in this game. It has a beautiful art style. Even on the Nintendo 3DS, you go back and you boot up your 3DS, you know, or your 2DS XL and play it on there, it actually still looks good in terms of the cities and towns. Now, of course, the character models, it's the 3DS, so necessarily not the best, but it fit the art style, the kind of, you know, more, I would say, like artistic with it. I mean, it's hard to explain exactly how the art style was in combination with the pop-up book stuff, but it works. So when people are seeing the character models for Bravely Default 2 and saying, oh, I'm not so sure about this, it works for the art style. It works for what they're trying to do with the art style. It's actually really beautiful, and one of the best things about the Bravely Default series. I absolutely love that about the game, outside of other stuff that we're going to talk about when it comes to gameplay. So the art style, to me, already from what I've seen, because I've watched the trailer so many times at this point, and it's going to be a huge step up from the original Bravely Default and Bravely Second and Layer. It is going to be a nice step up. A couple things that I've noticed in the debut trailer was the water effects. Water was not done well on Bravely Default and Bravely Second. It just didn't look that great, but you can already tell that the water effects are so much better. Also, like the grass that you can see, the mountain, everything is much better in this game, which it should be. Obviously, it's going from the Nintendo 3DS to the Nintendo Switch, and even if you look at the character models, much more detailed, even though they don't look as detailed from just looking at it at first. If you compare it to Bravely Default, much more detailed on the character models, much more depth on the detail on the cloth and kind of what they're wearing and everything. So I'm excited to see exactly how far they push this with the art style, what they're doing with like the pop-up book stuff, in addition to the art style for the characters. So overall, I think it's going to be really good. You just kind of have to wait for a little bit more. And also, one more thing to note, guys, is that it's not final with everything. Obviously, they still have more time to develop the game. I know originally Bravely Default, what we saw at the very beginning wasn't necessarily what we got at the end, so there's still more time to develop the game and kind of flesh out things. That was just the first trailer there. Now let's talk about the gameplay, because Bravely Default is known for its gameplay. It's absolutely amazing. If you've played Octopath Traveler, that is actually a light version of Bravely Default. Bravely Default gets way more in depth, because Bravely Default, you have multiple classes per character, and in Bravely Default, you can actually kind of put yourself in the negative, right? You can be brave and you can kind of put yourself in the negative to where you won't be able to attack for other turns. Whereas in Octopath Traveler, you can only put yourself in the positive, then go back to neutral or default. Whereas in Bravely Default, hey, you can kind of just go all the way down. You want to attack 4 times in a row without building up those charges, you can do that, and that's what makes the game Bravely Default. You know, that's how they kind of get it there. So to me, this is going to be probably the same type of battle system, but they're going to really, I would probably say, like, innovate it even more, because I think that they want to do a whole new thing with the battle system. I think they're going to want to kind of take it and say, what else can we do to manipulate it and make it even better than Bravely Second and Layer, which Bravely Second, obviously there's people that hate that game for whatever reason, but the gameplay in the game, what they did with it was actually really good. They modified the combat styles and kind of what you can do a bit more than Bravely Default. So I think with this one, they're going to try to take it and kind of do a bit more with it. Now we're going to have to wait and see what they do, but how they're going to manipulate it is definitely going to be classes too, right? Like, because in the original game, you had a bunch of different classes that you can pick from, which also makes it more in-depth than Octopath Traveler. So I'm excited to see how many classes there are going to be in this game and what you can do within those classes, because that's honestly one of the best things about Bravely Default, is just how anybody can be any class and take advantage of any of the skills, and you can customize and mix and match in order to build your favorite battle team. So I'm hoping that that really has some crazy combinations and cool new classes. Now, on my final thoughts when it comes to Bravely Default 2, I think that 2020, perfect release for this game. It's been a number of years since the original Bravely Default. I think 6 years? It's been a while. I know 2020, I think it came out 2014. So yeah, it's definitely going to be 6 years since the original release. It's been a while since Bravely Second, and it's just the time. I'm so happy they were able to kind of get the original back together. The original producer, you have the original music, Revo, which is really good, because you can even tell that is a mix, or I would say like a remix, more like it, of the original Bravely Default theme, what we saw in the debut trailer. So they're getting everybody back together to make this game, and I think that's really going to kind of take away the fears that some people might have from playing Bravely Second and Layer when it comes to the change in music and kind of some of the other stuff that they did with the story and all of that. This is the original team, Bravely Default, Octopath Traveler. Notice how they didn't mention Bravely Second and Layer anywhere in that debut trailer, but you saw Bravely Default, you saw Octopath Traveler. So they kind of just want to let people know, okay, you know, don't worry about Bravely Second and Layer, don't worry about that. This is its new thing that's going to take the spirit of the original. So I'm excited to just play the game, and it's coming 2020. So what do you guys think about this when it comes to Bravely Default 2? You guys excited to play? Do you guys have any questions on the game? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Go and check out the links in the description below. We got Facebook and Twitter. Go ahead and give us a like and a follow on our social media. Hit that like button if you did like this video. Lets me know you guys want more content like this going forward in the future. And subscribe to PlayerEssence for the latest RPG, Japanese, and Nintendo gaming news. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.